Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about the one Ordertide race that the largest share of the player base would like to see reworked based on polling. Now, what the polling has shown is that overwhelmingly players want fixes for existing lords and races. Now, out of the races in the game, what people really want to see in terms of priority of reworks is in this order. And number one is vampire counts. I know it sounds surprising. It is surprising. I don't agree with that, but that's what people voted for. Make of that what you will. But vampire counts for undead factions. Like, more people want undead reworks than anything else. And out of that, overwhelmingly, they want vampire counts to be reworked. Now, for my part, I think Tomb Kings and Vampire Coast do desperately need reworks far more than the counts. I mean, the counts work. I understand that it can be a bit dull. I understand that they've only gotten one DLC, but they work. I can't say the same about the Coast and the Tomb Kings. Not in the same way. Especially the Coast. So my personal priority would be Vampire Coast at number 1. Norsca number 2. Out of the cast races, it is the highest priority for the player base based on the polling. And for the Ordertide, it would be Kislev. Like, I really think Kislev needs a rework far more than anything else. But for people, it would be the Lizardmen at number 3. So this is like kind of like the third highest priority for the player base based on the polling I've done. And some polls have gotten thousands of votes. Give them a couple of days to get to 3,000, 4,000 votes. It's a pretty good sample, especially among the active community. Though, keep in mind, always take that kind of stuff with a grain of salt, because what you're not seeing is the perspective of people who aren't necessarily so involved in the whole war, but do buy DLC, do play the game, and, you know, Creative Assembly is relying on for customers. Because it's not just the people that post on Reddit every day, it's not the people who check out videos every day that are the only ones that matter. So always keep in mind that perspective, because those kind of people are probably not going to be represented in poll as much. But just worth pointing out. Now, with respect to the Lizardmen, what are the problems? Well, let's start with the jungle. Because, like, Lizardmen campaigns, as you might expect, are focused on the jungle. With the exception of Axiatl, which actually makes him the best Lizardmen campaign and the only playable one in the entire game. The problem with the jungle is that it genuinely sucks as a terrain type. For any race, for any campaign, it's one of the worst. And the Lizardmen are actually one of the worst races to deal with the jungle, because they have slow growth, limited income, limited casualty replenishment, you name it, that in terms of mechanics that can slow them down, they do have it. It's kind of hilarious, but I'm not going to joke on this. Do you know which campaign is the best for a jungle warfare campaign? Phoric. No joke. And I'm not bullshitting on this. You play Phoric, you have jungle as pleasant climate, suitable climate, and you get Grombrindle for 15% campaign movement range, and you get a bunch of engineers, and voila. Or the Empire, any Imperial campaign, because they all have jungle. So it is a sad state of affairs. Like, genuinely, Karl Franz or Elspeth in particular would do really well in jungle. Though I think, like, Phoric wins out because he gets Grombrindle, and, you know, Grombrindle has the most amount of movement range of any campaign. But still, those are much better at dealing with the jungle. Dwarves are better than Empire, though, because they can use Underway. I mean, the jungle is slow to navigate as a terrain type, but have the Underway, it gets better. Skaven are better at navigating it because they also get movement range with engineers, though their engineers are in more limited capacity than the Empire and Dwarves. So the masters of the jungle, the guys who have fought casts to a standstill for millennia, can't even fight in their own backyard. They actually do better across the world, but a lot of the campaigns do actually have severe limitations in climate. Consider Masamundi. He has jungle, desert, and savanna. Savanna is not really important, very limited territory. There's some desert on the campaign map, mostly in Hekara, but yeah. This is basically your playground. It is large enough, sure, but geez, Lestria does suck in terms of its design. So the climate itself is bad, but then on top of that, you have the design of Lustria. And not all Lizardmen campaigns are focused on Lustria, Nakai, Tic-Tac-Toe, Croc Art, not focused necessarily on Lustria. But yeah, Lustria's design right now, especially the mini Ordertide of Masamundi on Bow, Marcus Wolfhart, and Albrecht, is not in a good place. It makes the whole thing pretty damn dull and annoying to deal with. So those are two big issues. third issue is the Legendary Lords themselves. Not a lot of them are interesting. I mean, Gorok is great, sure. Oxyotl is a freaking amazing. Like, put Oxyotl with his exact same mechanics for any other race in the freaking game. He would be one of the best lords in the entire game, or probably the best lord in the entire game. He does have some lag issues. That's a performance issue that I would hope Creative Assembly fixes. But then you have poor Mazdamundi. Then you have issues with Tic-Tac-Toe. Then you have issues with Krokgar. And it's just problems. Furthermore, on top of all that, this research tree is a gigantic mess. You first have to build structures to unlock it, which is never a particularly fun mechanic to deal with. Oh, get the scrying pool, get the structure that you only want to get for technology's sake. Oh, joy, I really love that. Get a bunch of meaningless benefits or insignificant benefits that don't really feel that great. Okay, 10% campaign movement rate, certainly. Enjoy getting a bunch of structures that you're only going to pick up for the sake of research. Yep, I am not freaking joking on that. It is really not a fun experience at all to deal with all of this in any way, shape, or form. So that's just the research tree. Let me go even further. Beyond the shitty movement range, you have shitty construction, because while you have a decent level of growth, and that's not the problem, and the costs aren't too bad, and the growth itself that you can get isn't horrible, getting a tier 3 capital takes 6 turns. For reference, for most races, it's a lot faster than that. And even a tier 2 capital, like, let me just take this particular element of the Fallen Gates, like looking at that situation, right? And that's in suitable climate. It's still 5 turns, whereas for most races it's 4. Actually, I think like it's virtually every other race than Nurgle. And let me say this, Nurgle has various advantages in terms of like building stuff because, you know, infections. Though Nurgle has his own issues. Still, I'll take playing any Nurgle campaign any day over playing the freaking Lizardmen. Beyond that, people will argue that people who think that Lizardmen don't need the rework say, oh, you got a bunch of units, Lizardmen got free paid DLC, you should be satisfied. Yeah, Lizardmen did get free paid DLC. I purchased every single one of them. Do you know how much I played Lizardmen in Warhammer 2? Or Warhammer 3 even? Very fucking little. I've played a lot more in Warhammer 3 because it's my job, but when I was just playing on my own, like, I didn't get any of the Lizardmen DLC for the freaking Lizardmen, I can tell you that much. I got Ikiclaw for Ikiclaw. I got the Beastmen DLC for the sake of the Beastmen, which included Oxyotl. And I got the Hunter and the Beast because archers were pretty damn fucking important for the Empire. Like, yeah, I got the DLC just for 1 unit because that Empire was that bad. It's a lot better now. You don't need that DLC anyway, but yeah, I didn't buy any of those DLCs. So you have a lot of Legendary Lords, one of the largest shares, one of the largest number of Legendary Lords, but they're almost all of them except 1 or 2, depending on how you want to view Gorok, they're all pretty crap. I mean, Tenuan can be good as well, but just a dull campaign. It also breaks the game, because you start the global Skaven war between Lizardmen and Skaven, and that literally breaks the AI functions of all those factions. So yeah, Tenuan is like, he's strong, people say, yeah, he breaks the freaking game completely. I'm not just joking on it. I've played that campaign, I can tell you. It's just fun watching all those factions sitting, doing nothing, or marching across the entire world to attack another faction, winning or losing and accomplishing very little. Yeah, that's the AI can't handle that, basically. So it ends up being a fairly broken situation with respect to Tenuan's campaign. That's why I would never recommend it. Certainly very powerful, completely freaking broken. Like, even the ones that have power are broken. On top, but in terms of like the units, like, it's all well and great. Guess what? You don't have the economy to support them, because even cheap Lizardmen units are more expensive than other races. And they're not necessarily that much more powerful than the units that they have. Sauras certainly are good, right, for a tier 2 unit, but not really the best. Like, you know, Jade Warrior Crossbowmen, Anti-Large, you name it. They will do well. But yeah, starting in a situation where you're one of your most basic units, like you don't even want to use skinks unless, we're talking about chameleon skinks. And even then, very limited situation. The skinks are better, but like most of them are not freaking worth using, with the exception of like, chameleon skinks. Red crested skinks, hit or miss. Like they have some benefits, frenzy, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, like the Saurus Death Ball is there, put it simply, and it's worth using. But the problem is you end up with limited armies because of that. You can do a combination of Saurus and skinks, but you effectively end up with more expensive armies than other races, and because your buildings are slow, it means your economy is going to build slow. It's not a horrible economy, though it caps out at 400, which is a bit of a problem. Like, it's basically kind of like the Empire, but the Empire units are cheaper, and the Empire has other advantages in terms of their economy. Technically, you can argue you can get the geomantic pylon and the geomantic web and make that work, but yeah, that's really not a great situation to be dealing with. It can end up, like, you put a lot of effort to get it to a decent spot, and because of the combination of slow building, slow terrain, horrible map design in Lustria, and even the Southlands is not that great, you end up playing the end turn button simulator. This is the problem with Lizardmen. Like, they have casualty replenishment, they have growth, they have a decent enough income. You would think they would be decent, but no, they're garbage, because when you add all of those things that make them mediocre together, it ends up hurting them a lot more than anything individually. Worse still, you have limited hero capacity. You can get a Skink Chief at tier 2, and you can get a Skink Priest at tier 3, but everything beyond that is going to require you to get provincial capitals at tier 4 for Saurus Scar veterans, and, increasing capacity for both Skink Oracles and Priests. In some campaigns, you can get them earlier. I think, like, Krakar can get Saurus Scar veterans at tier 3, but those are the exceptions, not the rule. You can improve it with Tamarkan's defeat rate. Enjoyed getting that one. I would certainly say, like, play an Oxyotl campaign, go to Tamarkan, get the defeat rate, get a bunch of characters with that defeat rate, and play a Lizardman campaign. It does make things. But if you're having to use a cheese, it's not cheating, contrary to what people believe. Cheating is when, you're using a mod that gives you 100,000 income or something like that. Using the game's mechanics, and literally a campaign mechanic and a defeat rate, which is all part of the game to make for a better experience, is not cheating. It's exploiting, sure. It's cheesing, sure. I agree with that. But when you have to cheese to make a campaign enjoyable, that is not good. Like, cheese will always happen. I've said this with Kislev, and I'll say it again. Cheese will always happen in the game. But what's important is that the races themselves at the baseline level are good enough that cheesing is not required. And even with Tamarkan's defeat rate, you still have to get to freaking tier 4, which is going to take ages in a Lizardman campaign, because, like, getting to a tier 4 settlement, provincial capital, takes 7 turns, combined with 13 freaking turns. And that's just building this stuff, ignoring the fact that you want to potentially build up minor settlements up first before you go into it in this particular situation. So yeah, awful freaking experience in numerous ways. Like, you're gonna get to tier 4 at one of the slowest paces in the game. Even Nurgle can beat you to tier 4, and that's not saying a great thing, because at least Nurgle can get a lot more growth than you at the very least, right? And can potentially, get vassals for income as well as other benefits to make that work. Yeah, construction cost or time or both through the plagues. That's the thing about Nurgle. That's why Nurgle can work. Lizardmen, yeah, they're not selling it. And I also feel really bad about Mazdamundi. Like, he's, like, genuinely the worst mage character in the game. Like, I think, like, the theory we could go for is, like, right now he's, like, semi-awake. He's sleeping. He's sleepwalking. And when he finally wakes up, he will be the biblical level of threat that he should be. I mean, seriously. Mazdamundi. Do you know how powerful Mazdamundi is to lore? When the Skaven blew up the moon in the end times, he freaking saved the world by destroying a lot of those fragments. Half the world burned anyway, but he saved what remained from being annihilated. Oh, and this mountain range that you're seeing like this, it's like he built it with his freaking mind. That is who Mazdamundi is in the lore. Like, basically consider how powerful Gelt is with his campaign mechanics right now after their rework, and multiply that by 10, and you might approach the level of power. Or consider how Lord Croak is really powerful from turn 1. Understand that Masmundi should technically be at least on the same level, if not a bit more powerful than Lord Croak, because Croak is dead. So, just worth pointing out, death does have its consequences, even for being as supreme as Croak. So those are the kind of things to keep in mind. It is really a sad state of affairs. So I do think I will like Lizardmen to be more interesting. I would like to, use Dinos, Death Balls, and Dread Saurians, and Stegodons, and Carnosaurs. It sounds freaking awesome. But when I play a Lizardmen campaign, it just ends up being Stars and maybe Croxigars. Also, by the way, Lizardmen do actually need multiple buildings to actually get things like Horned Ones, Temple Guard, and Sacred Croxigars, which is like something that dragged down the Empire for freaking years. Thankfully, that's gone, but it needs to be gone for the Lizardmen as well. I do hope they get a rework. I don't know which character they'd add for a DLC, like really, because pretty much all the Lizardmen characters are in the game, so I wouldn't know what else they could add. That's kind of the sad state of affairs. Like, maybe Creative is thinking, Lizardmen need a rework? We had a lot of them, so why the hell do they need the rework? Yeah, you had a lot of units, but you didn't fix any of the issues that existed since Warhammer 2. Like, it's not like these things are kind of brand new. No, Lizardmen have had issues since Warhammer 2. And they suffered a lot because of the Skaven aspect in Warhammer 2, the Skavenization of Warhammer 2. Why did they suffer? Because Skaven got all the shiny new stuff. And mind you, Skaven inherently as a race worked far better in Warhammer 2 than Lizardmen ever did. But yeah, you look at the DLCs that contain Skaven in Warhammer 2 versus what the other races got, yeah, Skaven ended up winning for the most part. That's all I had to say on the subject. Costin signing out. Let me know what you guys think. What do you think CA should do? Some people don't think that CA should prioritize. I can understand it. Like, there's more popular stuff that they could do to sell. Though apparently Cafe is not as popular as CA might believe it to be.